Alright, what up, my dude? So, just letting you guys know, I'm going to be uploading a crap load of videos here in the next few weeks. So, if you don't have me actually belled on YouTube, a little notification bell, just letting you know, because YouTube gets a little weird when you start uploading a lot. Like, it has trouble, for whatever reason, really sending out the proper amount of notifications the more that you upload. Makes it to where YouTube kind of spazzes out and doesn't really know what to do with all the notifications. So, either way, just letting you know, if you do want to get all my notifications, be sure and have me belled. But if you don't, it's all good. I understand. You ain't got to want all my notifications, dog, okay? I got it. The first Supercross game versus the third Supercross game. So this is my first time coming back in here and playing the first Supercross game since I played the third one. This is really interesting because I'm noticing all of the how much Supercross 3 has actually changed from the first Supercross game, and I recommend some of you guys coming in here and doing this. After you played the third one for like 10 plus hours, go back and play the first one. And you'll start realizing everything I've been talking about from the very beginning, okay? I was talking about some of this stuff before the first Supercross game ever even came out, dog. There was so much of this that I was talking about back then, and people just did not realize this. There was so much hype around the first Supercross game. There was so much excitement around it. We hadn't had an official Supercross game, and since what the hell, Supercross 2000 or whatever that game was forever ago, right? We hadn't had a game in so long that was actually an official Supercross game, so it didn't even matter what the game was really like. People were going to love it because it was an official Supercross game. And it just so happened to be where it had really, really good graphics, really good visual effects to everything, you know. So it really, I feel like, pulled everybody in. But the deeper you got into the first Supercross game, you started to realize, especially if you're really like not so much of a casual motocross gaming fan, you really have played a lot of motocross games, you know kind of how they are, you know arcade motocross physics, you know how shit is. You started to realize pretty quickly how much of a sort of a facade that this first Supercross game was kind of playing on everybody. It was really just tricking everybody is what it was doing, I feel like. I feel like it was one of those things where it looked really good, looked amazing, all this kind of stuff, but when you got down to the gameplay and the nitty-gritty and what it actually felt like and all these different things, that's really where you started seeing the pitfalls and the downsides to the first Supercross game. It is just so... It's so apparent now when you go back and look at it. It's just insane. So one of the biggest differences to the gameplay side of it, the way the bike feels, like this is something that annoyed me so much about the first two Supercross games, especially the first Supercross game, that I just could not stand. And so many people just look past this aspect like it was nothing, but I look at it like it's the most important aspect of a motocross game, and it's called inertia. A little thing called inertia, okay? Might be a little hard for some of you, first Supercross game fanboys to understand what that even is, because this game didn't even have any inertia to it, literally at all. The bike doesn't even have any inertia to it whatsoever. It is as much as you could possibly make. It's as arcadey as you could possibly make the physics to a motocross game out there, period. I mean, I am fully to that point to where I believe this is as arcadey as you can possibly get it in a arcade, motocross game out there. And I understand, it's an arcade motocross game. I get it, okay? But it's literally to the point in this first Supercross game where it actually feels like you can be a 3-year-old kid or a 90-year-old grandma and be just as fast in this game as anybody else is. You know what I mean? That's literally what this game feels like to me whenever I play it. And I've put some hours into this game, guys. I haven't played it in a little while, so sorry for looking a little like I don't know what I'm doing here, but it's just because I haven't played this game in a while. But this is really what drove me nuts about this game, made it to where I didn't really want to play this game, is the inertia was just non-existent. It felt like there was no inertia to the bike at all. So, like, and what I mean by that is, like, when you come up short on something or you're moving on the bike kind of has a little bit of a mind of its own when you have inertia to a physics system. Whereas this game, it feels so arcadey to the point to where every movement you make on the bike, everything you do on the bike is so, like, laser exact. exactly what you're doing to the point to where it doesn't even feel like you're actually on a real life dirt bike at all. At all. It doesn't even feel like you're on a dirt bike at all. It just feels like you're on this laser lined machine that's just doing exactly what you want it to do everywhere to a completely unrealistic level to where it doesn't even feel like an actual real dirt bike. You see what I'm saying? Like, that was the problem to me with the first Supercross game, was it just felt like I was a zombie playing that game. I didn't even have to think about what I was doing ever. Just hold it wide open everywhere in corner, and you never even had to think about hitting rhythms or hitting jumps or anything. Supercross is more difficult than that, okay? And I'm not saying you got to make these arcade Supercross games like a simulator. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying when you've got a Supercross game to the point to where you can just overjump, underjump anything as much as you could possibly imagine and never pop off the bike or never even lose momentum, aka the first Supercross game, then you're doing something wrong at that point, because it's not even capturing the essence of what Supercross is whatsoever. Because there's no big lines, there's no penalty to coming up short, there's no difficulty to it at all. Supercross inherently is pretty difficult, dog. You ever rode on a Supercross track in real life? That shit ain't no joke, dude. Like, you're gonna shit in your panties just trying to come around a corner to hit a main triple. The whoops are literally gonna break your ankles, dog. You're gonna break both your wrists on a whoop section your first time hitting them on a real life Supercross track. This shit ain't no joke. Supercross tracks ain't no joke in real life. So it was really, the first Supercross game to me was kind of it was like a slap in the face of what Supercross really is. You know what I mean? It kind of played it off like it was this no harm, no difficulty, really simple, easy thing. And that's just one thing I really did not like about that first Supercross game. And it's one of those things, I honestly, truly don't even believe that Milestone intended for the first Supercross game to be that easy and that arcadey and that simplistic of a physics system and that low amount of replayability. I don't even think they intended it to be like that. It was more so just I feel like their physics just weren't even developed to the point to where the bike actually felt like it had inertia and you could, really start hucking the bike and hitting bigger lines and, having all this extra skill gap and all this extra stuff. I literally feel like it's just because the game wasn't even developed enough to even be to that point yet. That's why it was like that. So some of you people trying to say just go back to the first or second Supercross game, you're literally just telling Milestone to go backwards. That's all you're doing, because all you're doing is telling them to go back to an easier, more simplistic, more basic physics system to their game. And it's the leaning forward and backwards and the whip systems of those first two Supercross games that were just teetotally unacceptable to me. I mean, there basically wasn't even really a leaning forward and backwards over a jump face or leaning backwards and forwards like a hucking system. There basically was no sort of system like that in the first two Supercross games at all. You were just hitting every jump, not really worried about leaning. You didn't have to really huck anything. You know how big of a deal hucking and seat bouncing is in real life Supercross? It's literally fucking everything to it, dog. It's literally everything. Your body position just didn't really matter in those first two Supercross games, and it made the gameplay so boring and repetitive. And then the whip systems were literally hitting a button and playing the same exact animation over and over and over. A lot of you guys had this weird-ass idea that, like, you would see those whips in the first Supercross game and be like, oh, well, they don't look so bad. But the problem is you're hitting a button and it's playing the same damn animation over and over and over. That's not even a whip system, dog. You're just hitting a button and playing an animation. At least with Supercross 3, there's variation to it. There's freeness to it. You can do different types of whips. Holy shit. And you can actually turn both your thumbsticks the same direction and still whip. Versus that bullshit Milestone being forced to turn both your thumbsticks the opposite directions that made the game feel super weird. Now you can turn both your thumbsticks the same direction and still whip. It is so much better. It is infinitely better. And it's not even questionable because it's not just about saying, oh, well, you know, the first Supercross game's cornering looked better, or, you know, the first Supercross game's whips looked better, or this looked better, or that looked better. It's not even like that, dog. The comparison is the first Supercross game didn't even have any inertia to it whatsoever. It didn't even feel real at all. And the whips were just hitting a button and playing an animation. At least with the third Supercross game, there's actually a feeling to the bike. There's actual inertia. It makes every other aspect of the game so much better, dude. So much better. It is unexplainable how much better that makes a motocross Supercross game actually feel. It's insane, dude. I mean, you can have your own opinion, but Jesus Christ, bro. God, if you want this arcadey of a motocross game, just go back and play these games. Or go back and play like MXGP2 or some shit, dog. There's already plenty of those games out there. We've got to advance this shit. Milestone's got to take this franchise somewhere and start doing something with this and get this closer to a game that can actually last a decade like Reflex did. These first two Supercross games had trouble even lasting more than 2 or 3 months apiece, dog. I'm telling you. Like, they had to improve on this stuff. They had to advance on this stuff. They had to make this stuff more skill-gapped and more deep and better and more inertia and all that kind of stuff. They had to do all this. You got to understand that, man. It's just crazy when I go back and play these games. They're just so mind-numbingly basic. It's just like, I'm just like going around this track, not ever even having to use my brain whatsoever on anything, hitting every single rhythm on the track. So I feel like that's the thing about it. Like, some people get into those games and it feels like you're going fast. It looks like you're going fast. It looks like you're hitting big lines. It, you know, all that kind of visually, graphically looks amazing. But it's all just a facade. It's all just a put on. That's not really what's going on in the actual gameplay itself. You boys have to come to that realization and start understanding that about those first two Supercross games. It's all just a fake. It's really just a fake trick. They were tricking you, dog. They were tricking you into making you, you know, feeling like you were going faster, but really it was just a visual thing. It was just the screen was moving past you quicker. So it made you think you were going faster, and you would jump all the jumps on a track, so you felt like you were a boss and really hitting big lines and hitting cool shit. But the thing about that is everybody was hitting those jumps. Those were easy jumps. They didn't take any skill to hit. But they made you feel like that because those were the biggest lines you could possibly hit on any of those tracks. But they weren't hard to hit. There was no negative effect of coming up short on them. The first Supercross game, you can overjump any jump in the entire game, literally, or underjump any jump in the entire game, and you will never pop off in that game. How in the hell can you defend a motocross and Supercross game that's like that? You will never pop off in that first Supercross game, ever. I think they improved on that a little bit in Supercross 2, but still, with this Supercross 3 game, there's actually, you lose momentum when you come up short, dog. You can land short on something on Supercross 3, and it actually, like, wads you up over the front end, and you actually fall down and wreck when you don't jump something right. You can overjump something in Supercross 3 and actually pop off of the bike. Like, there's all these things that can happen. The whoops, for God's sakes, in Supercross 3, you can actually get out of shape and flip over the front of the bike. I'm not saying the whoops are quite to the point where I think they should be, but God, they feel better. See, that's everything to what I'm really trying to explain in these videos. You can talk all you want to about the way the cornering feels in the first two Supercross games, or this feels better in the first two Supercross games, or that feels better, or whatever. But the whole thing about it is, the sort of thing I keep coming back to over and over is the first two Supercross games literally feel like they don't even have inertia to the bike at all. There's no inertia at all. So in a sense, nothing else matters if the bike doesn't even actually feel like a bike at all. You see what I'm saying? That's my biggest problem with those first two Supercross games. You can say whatever you want about the cornering feeling better or this, that, and another, whatever, but the damn bike don't even feel like an actual bike. It doesn't even have a feeling to it at all. It just feels like you're just on the gas riding on this super arcade basic thing Whereas Supercross 3 actually somewhat resembles real bike inertia, or some kind of inertia. You know what I mean? Shit, those first two Supercross games didn't even have inertia to them at all. So then it made every aspect of the riding and the physics and the feeling of the bike and everything more basic, more shallow, less skill gapped, more repetitive, more boring. But to those people that don't understand motocross games, they didn't even care. All they cared about was the graphics. All they cared about was what it looked like. They felt like they were going fast. They felt like they were James Stewart in a day on those games. They were hitting all the big lines, going fast around the track, what they thought was going fast around the track, but it was really just a visual effect. That's all those first two Supercross games were, dog. There was no big lines. There was no seat bounce hucking system. There was nothing. There's nothing to those games, dude. Those were literally some of the most basic, bare-boned arcade motocross gaming physics you will ever see in any of these games out here ever before. Those first two Supercross games were just painfully average because they looked really good. They looked amazing. They gave you the vibe like you were on a real life, AMA, FIM, Monster Energy Supercross race. But it really, when you got down to the gameplay, man, you start to see the negatives of those games. You really do. And at least with this Supercross 3 game, God, it finally feels like you're on some kind of an inertia-filling bike, and there's some kind of skill to, like, being able to hit bigger lines into a section and being able to lean over jump faces, which was just completely non-existent in the first two games. Man, some of you guys just aren't getting that, and or you haven't put enough time into Supercross 3 to realize that and understand that. But I'm telling you, dude, this is mountains above, levels ahead of those first two Supercross games when you talk about on-bike filling and physics filling to the game. I am telling you, dog, I've played enough of these games to understand that. And some of you boys I feel like you really, you may be talking from your real opinions and what you really feel about it, and I'm completely okay with that. But I really feel like it's one of those things you just don't even understand what you're really saying when you say those first two Supercross games were so much better than Supercross 3 and they just need to go back to that. I genuinely 100% honestly believe you don't even actually know what you're really saying when you say that. You're just too casual motocross gamer, and I'm saying that in the nicest way I know how to, but that's really what it is. They made those games for casuals, 100%. So if you wanted to really take those games seriously and try to get better at them and get a little deeper into them, the game wasn't even made for that. Those first two Supercross games weren't even made for that. It was really just 100% made for casuals. Whereas Supercross 3, I still feel like you can have a lot of fun with this game, even if you are casual, but there's also that layer and level to where you can have fun at this game when you're a little more serious into motocross games. Maybe you're not like a super hardcore motocross gamer. You can still have fun with it then. This kind of game to me appeals more to all kinds of motocross gamers. It appeals to casuals. It appeals to, kind of the amateur dudes, kind of the medium motocross gaming dudes. It appeals to the hardcore motocross gaming fans because you got some bigger lines, bigger triple ends, more skill gap, inertia to the bike, hucking system, all that kind of stuff. Rewarding when you hit lines right and can actually, take in sides or cut down in corners and do all this other kind of stuff. Whereas those first two Supercross games, they were 100% built around casuals, and that was it. That's all they were catering to, are casual motocross gamers in those first two Supercross games. And most of these dudes that don't really know what they're talking about, they don't even understand that. They just see graphics and they see animations, and that's all that matters. Literally, that's all that matters. And how much more proof do I need to have than those first two Supercross games? Them games fucking popped off, and they didn't even have an inertia filling to the bike. And there were still so many people that played those games and bought those games. It was just a crazy hype train of amazing advertisement and not having that kind of game in so long, and all these other elements coming together that really made those first two Supercross games pop off and be what they were. It wasn't even really the gameplay, dog. I'm telling you, it wasn't. If you'd have took all that other shit out of those first 2 Supercross games, like the hype around it and the advertisement and the graphical look to it and all that, if you'd have took all that away, there wouldn't have been a soul that would have wanted to play those games. I'm telling you, dog. If you based it all around the gameplay, ain't nobody would have played those games. Nobody. Literally nobody would have played those games. I am telling you, dog. I promise you, bro. So either way, had to come out and give my opinions on this shit. Finally, the Supercross 3 game. There's at least something to it. There's some kind of gameplay. I feel like you actually have to somewhat use your brain when you're riding on the track and you come around a certain rhythm. There's different line options. There's times where it forces you to hit different lines, to hit bigger or smaller rhythms. There's all this. There's actually, like, gameplay here. There's something to this game. Dog, this is what arcade motocross games are more so supposed to be like right here. This is what it's supposed to be more like. So, either way, appreciate you guys watching all the videos. Later, dudes.